Thank you very much, Ayushi. That was a very exhilarating start to this session. Whether I can bring any insights to bear in this conversation or not, I certainly can't match your wit. I appreciate the manner in which you played with the stereotypes of Hyderabad and all that. And so I want to first, bring up two aspects that show that, yes, we all know Hyderabad in recent years for its fabled Nizami background, its cuisine, and so on and so forth. But not too long ago, around the time of independence, Hyderabad was the only state, princely state, which was subjected to, an army invasion. It was only because Indian government sent troops to Hyderabad finally in September 1948, which is more than a year after most of India became independent, that Hyderabad was liberated. It was in September 48, and it was as a result of what is known as Operation Polo, right? There wasn't much resistance, but it was still something that required that kind of hostile takeover. The only other instance of that happened more than a decade later in Goa. Again, there the Indian government had to send troops to liberate Goa, right? You can't put Kashmir in that category because Kashmir was an instance where the Kashmir ruler asked for Indian troops to be sent to drive away those invaders from the Pakistan side, the irregulars, the tribals, so-called, So that's one. So this is the only instance when Hyderabad came into Indian fold through army action, which was incidentally called police action, not army action, for legal reasons, right? And the second one is that among all the major cities in the country today, Hyderabad would certainly be counted among them because of what Dinesh has very evocatively put in the subtitle. It's a globalized city, right? So it is certainly, there was a time when we used to say, you were too young to remember that or to know of that, but in my childhood, the big cities were the four metros, the four cities that were directly connected with the colonial rule: Bombay, Madras, Calcutta, and Delhi. And most of these places are now known by different names too, right? That's because of their British origins, right? Now, to the list of these four cities came to be added in recent years two more cities. Both happen to be from the south, Bangalore and Hyderabad, right? Now, among these six cities, Hyderabad is the only one which has no direct connection with colonial rule. Why would I say that? Despite the fact that Bangalore was part of another princely state, namely Mysore. So one could say the same about Mysore. But no, there is a difference. Because of the subsidiary alliance, all princely states had a British resident, and there was also a British army stationed. There would be a cantonment. So there was a Nizam's cantonment near Golconda, and then there were two. In fact, he brings it out in his book. There were two. What do you call those? Two sets kinds of armies that were stationed there in Secunderabad. Secunderabad was the place where the British was established. A pocket in the larger state of Hyderabad. Now that was contiguous to Hyderabad, and therefore even today they are called twin cities, right? But in the case of Mysore, British chose, they couldn't resist choosing Bangalore, which is far away from Mysore. And the obvious reason is that when Bangalore had these great geographical advantages, its salubrious climate and all that, so they chose that. But it was very much within the Mysore's princely state, and it was serving the very purpose that Secunderabad was serving in the case of Hyderabad, though it was quite some distance away from Mysore. Now, today, Hyderabad, the globalized Hyderabad, is not just the twin cities of Hyderabad and Secunderabad. A lot of the activity now, a lot of the buzz, the traction is because of Cyberabad, right? It's on the western corridor. You seem rather familiar with Hyderabad. Okay, okay. So now, yes, it began with, developments that were beyond Jubilee Hills, Madhapur, Gachibowli, now Kokapet, all sorts of, there's no end to it. It's one very, if you have not been to Hyderabad, then maybe you've been to Gurgaon. So it's a bit like that. Lots of glitzy, tall buildings and a lot of modern aspects you see there. Very Western in its appearance. And one more thing that makes Hyderabad very distinct from not just the other 5 major cities, but probably any major city in the country is, and that's a major reason for its very globalized appearance of today, which is that there's a huge ring road constructed around Hyderabad called ORR, Outer Ring Road. It's been named Nehru Outer Ring Road. For some reason, in cities like Madras or Bombay, it is not possible because they are coastal cities to have a ring road, right? And for a city like Delhi, again, it's not possible because all around you have other states. And it's already a huge urban conglomeration. So Delhi is already surrounded by other cities like Noida, Faridabad, Gurgaon. So it is very hard to imagine or conceive of an outer ring road, right? The outer ring road that exists is already within the city, right? So, and there is an inner ring road. But the outer ring road I am talking about is, those who have not seen, it would not seem like part of India. It's an 8-lane expressway, and it has made a lot of difference to the quality of life in Hyderabad, and needless to add, real estate prices and stuff like that. And it's all around. And the success of Outer Ring Road has prompted the policymakers there and the political leaders there to think of another ring road. They call it regional ring road further. But then there are rightly critics who say, look, are we now heading towards another huge urban conglomeration which may be looking impressive in the short run, but then it might be starving the rest of the state of requisite attention. There are so many cities. Is it a good idea to have all of it concentrated in one place? So there's always 2 sides to all such issues. So we will discuss such and more such issues in the course of this conversation. I've already given a rather long introduction. So the first thing I would like to ask Dinesh is that given his background as a journalist, as a science journalist, what he has done in his book, even for a Hyderabadi like me, it has been incredibly instructive. So much new material you get to know. Because these things have not been written about. Now, his focus has been essentially on institutions, knowledge institutions, as he put it, scientific establishments that have come up in Hyderabad over the decades. It's not just in the recent past. And how that in turn led to this kind of a boom in corporate sector and a lot of interest evinced by foreign companies, big multinationals. They have some of their biggest centers in Hyderabad, leading to this inevitable comparison with Bangalore. So if, as he put it in his book, if Bangalore has been hailed as the IT capital of India, one of the experts he quotes, he himself doesn't say so, towards the end of his book is, Hyderabad has emerged as the innovation capital of India. And it has, it's there at the cutting edge in pharma industry, in vaccines. You might recall that during the vaccine days, you had an Oxford vaccine coming from Pune, but an indigenous vaccine coming from Hyderabad. So that's an example of how strong the vaccine industry is in Hyderabad and so on and so forth. So here's a science journalist, therefore eminently suited to shed light on that. So will you please tell us why you believe, I'm assuming, though you didn't say it yourself, you didn't quite stick your neck out, but why is there this perception about this competition between Hyderabad and Bangalore, that Bangalore has this strength and Hyderabad has that strength? Please elaborate on that.
Thank you, Manoj. given the fact that this is his third session in the day, I must admire the levels of energy. Thank you. And of course, you're passionate about all the subjects which you speak about, and particularly this one. And I think you've given a nice backdrop of what I'm going to write and where the book places, that how did a city which was a princely estate in 1940, up to 1948, and by 2000 or so, it became a globalized city, or the process is going on. So the question which I wanted to address was that, how did this happen? Because, I mean, if not 48, whole of India was under the British rule, and many cities started with the same trajectory. And what difference did it make in Hyderabad that it has come to this level? I'm not going to get into the figures. You mentioned about several pointers about the IT industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the vaccine manufacturing. All those data is there in the public domain. So having been born in Hyderabad, but having lived outside Hyderabad, I had that critical distance to see the city grow. And if you are continuously there, you don't feel the change. No? Things happen and you don't notice that. But since I've been away from the city for 35 years now. In 1990, I moved to Delhi, but I kept that connection with the city. I have my extended family there. So every time we were watching this change happen, so I was myself curious that how is this change happening and why is this change happening? And like many things, people take short-term views like, okay, it's due to liberalization, okay, it's due to the policies of Chandrababu Naidu, who was the chief minister in the 90s, and was it due to the IT, the demand from the external, factors like the Y2K issue which came up, so did it lead to? So people were looking at in different ways, why did this growth take place? So that is the question, core question I wanted to address that. And when I started looking at that as to satisfy my own curiosity, I also looked at Bangalore, and I have lived in Bangalore in the 80s and have been visiting that city very often. And as part of my first book on the IT industry, the history of IT industry, this Hyderabad and Bangalore both figured, but I did not go into the details of how did these two centers develop. Since you asked this question about the comparison between Hyderabad and Bangalore, see, both were princely states in one way. I mean, not directly ruled by the British, but heavy influence of British was there. And they became part of India around the same time, 47 and 48. So so the trajectories of both of them were similar. Both were supposed to be, there were 4 or 5 princely states which are supposed to be progressive, and in terms of education, industry, development of institutions like Hyderabad, Mysore, Travancore, Baroda. These are the 4 or 5 states. So what difference did it make? And that's why I wanted to look at the knowledge institutions, so to say, because all the time we use knowledge city as a jargon, but most of the time it is, people are talking of a new township coming up and calling it a knowledge city, but that doesn't make it a knowledge city. So what are those ingredients? When I start looking at that, you find that it is the knowledge institutions that make a difference. The core difference between Hyderabad and Bangalore is that, Bangalore had very early on a knowledge institution called Indian Institute of Science, early part of the 20th century. So that made a lot of difference to the growth of institutions which followed in Bangalore. So that was not the case with Hyderabad. Hyderabad was a late starter in that sense. Of course, Osmania University was founded in 1918, and it became a bigger institution in later decades. But it was not a research university like Indian Institute of Science, but the core function was research. So that was a key differentiator between Hyderabad and Bangalore. And that presence of an institute like IISc led to development of industry when Vishwesvaraya became the Diwan, and he unleashed the industrialization. So that was a key differentiator. And of course, Walchand Industry set up the Hindustan Aeronautics, so that also made a difference. So that was one key difference between Hyderabad and Bangalore. So Hyderabad's growth.
It started as a private sector.
Yeah, it was Walchand, Iran, yeah. And that was the Second World War. And it was the British promoted industry. They wanted an industrialist to do that so that if there are losses, they can, take it up. So that's how aeronautics came to Bangalore. So
For several decades, Bangalore's airport was in.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So a series of developments happened in Bangalore, so that's what happened. Whereas in case of Hyderabad, of course, developments were there. Usman University was there. There was an industrial lab. But the pace picked up after 1948 because so the first phase of ideas and institutions developed between early part of the 20th century up to 48. And then there is a push from the central government in the sense that Nehru felt that, Hyderabad was lagging behind, so it has to be integrated with the mainstream. There was a focus on regional development, so certain institutions were set up deliberately in South India, particularly Hyderabad, so that there's a growth in all the regions. So a lot of institutions came.
Especially defense institutions.
Yeah, defense institutions moved there because it was away from the border. That was a strategic reason that, a lot of institutions moved from Delhi to Hyderabad, the defense institution. And also there was a lot of reorganization happening in the 60s. So the DRDO, which was reorganized. So at that time, those institutions were moved. So this second phase of institution building happens from 1948 onwards. So 60s was a hectic phase of development. And that's when new public sectors like IDPL and ECIL also come up in Hyderabad in the 60s. So, whereas same thing is happening in Bangalore. So, up to 80s, again, the trajectories are same, minus Indian Institute of Science. But there are other institutions, Hyderabad made up by having a lot of engineering colleges, private engineering colleges, agriculture university, and a whole lot of other institutions also came up. So, the trajectories of both the cities are more or less same up to 1980s. And so that's the comparison part. And then liberalization made a difference, and the policies which were followed, and implementation of those liberalized policies at the state level really made the difference. That's when progressive Chief Minister like Chandrababu Naidu comes in the picture.
But Bangalore had a head start.
Yeah, Bangalore had a head start in the IT sector. But the key factors for in Hyderabad in terms of what we see today, there are two major streams of knowledge-based. What is a knowledge city? When you produce knowledge, you have institutions to generate knowledge, you have people to man those institutions, but that's not sufficient enough a condition for a city to become a knowledge city. You should also have mechanisms whereby that knowledge is converted into wealth. You should have knowledge-based industries. Yeah. You should have, mechanisms so that that knowledge produces something, it creates employment, wealth, and that is why you call it a knowledge city. So if you look at that from that perspective, that change started happening gradually from the, say, late 70s till 90s, and the exponential growth came after the 90s because of several other factors, external factors, the policies and all that. So the key differences or the key, sectors which came up in Hyderabad or for which Hyderabad is known today is that technology outsourcing and IT and technology outsourcing, I combine there, and pharmaceuticals. And I've gone into the detail of how did that happen, which are the institutions or which are the bodies responsible for that, who are the people, what are the policies, that have gone into details. I'm not going to get into the micro stories, but broadly speaking, the state had a big role. Today we all celebrate the private sector, Dr. Reddy's lab and Bharat Biotech and, Shanta Biotech and a whole lot of pharmaceutical and vaccine manufacturing industries, and IT sector. You have all the top names of the global technology sector present in Hyderabad. But the state had a major role. If you look at how did those skills develop, all the skills developed in the state sector. For example, IDPL is the mother institution for the pharmaceutical industry in India, I would say. Although technically it's been a failure because it was a loss-making unit and everybody was blaming it, close it down. But in terms of generating the necessary manpower, generating that framework where technologies could be developed or imported technologies could be indigenized. I mean, we call in a derogatory sense, we use reverse engineering, but it's not a simple thing. Suppose a molecule is known, and if you want to make it the same drug in India, using a different route, but you need the knowledge of the chemistry there. So those skills happen, and that's what bodies like IDPL did. And Dr. Reddy was working in IDPL.
Yeah, exactly.
And a whole lot of people were there in these institutions. They came out. ECIL produced so many offshoots. And the first set of people, 5 set of people who founded the core team of Wipro was recruited from ECIL. So that way. So
in today's context, the EVMs.
Yeah, EVM, of course, EVMs came out of ECI. So I think those are the linkages one needs to understand. How did that happen? So it's not just public sector making a laws, but how did they contribute to the growth of the city? So that's why I've gone into the details of how it happened, who are the people, and which are the companies formed. That's the story.
So one lesson from it is, when you are assessing an institution, you should look beyond the bottom line. Even if it is in the red, it might still have served a larger social or historical purpose. But if I can belabor on this point, any dramatic example or two you can give of innovations from Hyderabad?
No, innovations, if you really look at what do you
Because
call...
that was a big claim to make.
Yeah,
Towards the end of your book, Innovation Capital of India. So to substantiate that claim, is there any 1 or 2 examples, dramatic examples?
I was only saying that it is trying to be. Right now, see, the biggest criticism of the IT industry is that it's an outsourcing industry.
Oh.
We are serving the foreign clients, Amazon, Google, they have all their mega offices in Hyderabad. The biggest center of Amazon outside America is in Hyderabad. Biggest center of Google outside their headquarters is in Hyderabad. So that's true. So right now, that's true of Bangalore also, that we are a talent country. We have a lot of technical talent, but are we becoming a technology country? Are we able to produce the IP, the intellectual
That
property?
criticism is made even against the iconic Infosys also. That are they doing any great value addition? Or
Absolutely. So one thing is that, of course, this has led to a lot of employment generation, wealth creation, and the development which you see today.
Yeah.
But if you really want to make it a breakthrough, so to say, one needs to go to the next step, and it's not as if it's not happening. See, one cannot do all this without, you can't say, okay, we'll become an innovation city or innovation country without doing all this. So you need that critical mass of talent, you need that critical mass of capital, you need that ecosystem where people can move from one company to another. That's how new ideas come up. No, and that process is happening. It's not as happening. There are several examples. EVM you mentioned, UPI. That's another big thing. To my view, the biggest the railway reservation, computerization of railway reservation was done in 1984, much before even computers became a household item.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
No, CMC, Computer Maintenance Corporation.
Sorry,
So much before computers even became a commercial product. So all that has been there. So one cannot say that we are not a product country, but we have been a services country, and we have used that to serve our social needs in a big way, because of course all these innovations which I have mentioned have come out from the public sector.
Yeah. Since we are holding this conversation in Dehradun, very much part of North India, the Hindi belt, it might come as a surprise to some of you, if not all of you, that Hindi is not alien to Hyderabad, partly because we had this rule by Nizam, and before that Asaf Jait. We had 2 dynasties, one from Golconda, another from Hyderabad. These are contiguous. And so it was not quite Hindi, but it was Urdu, right? Dakhni, yes, to be more precise. And Hyderabad has the distinction of having had the first university, before the university, I must say, Hyderabad is the first place where Urdu was given the status of an official language. It was a court language in Hyderabad. Unlike in, say, a place like Delhi, where till 1857, when Mughal court existed, it was Persian that was the court language. But Hyderabad elevated Urdu, which was merely a street language. It was something that was considered the language of the hoi polloi, not any classical status. So Hyderabad gave it the status of a court language. And then that was followed by the creation of the first ever university which had Urdu as the medium of instruction. I'm referring to Osmania University, which he mentioned. Now, what happened with that was that it led to this frenzied activity of translation. Because if you have taken this ambition upon yourself to teach everything, economics, history, law, even medicine, science, everything in Urdu, then you need to create textbooks for that. So for some years, there was that kind of activity, which in retrospect would seem like a futile attempt because it didn't last long. I mean, after independence, it had to join with the mainstream and all that. So how do you look at that? Was that a wasted effort or in retrospect, did Hyderabad benefit from it? Though a lot of activity was going on in Urdu, I must say that, there were very amazing scientific developments going on in Hyderabad. The first or second Nobel Prize winner in medicine was for a discovery that was made in Hyderabad. I'm talking about malaria, right? So these kind of things happened, and there was this amazing observatory, Nizam Observatory, which was part of one global initiative to study science, skies, many decades ago. Yeah. So this was a kind of scientific activity going on in a princely state. So that is something remarkable. And my question was about, Urdu background being responsible for Hyderabad still being a very friendly city to outsiders. One of the reasons why Hyderabad has grown so big, has become, as he said, a globalized city, where so many Indians from across the country not only come there to work, but many of them choose to stay back. They buy properties and retire. And I know many from army and civil services who happen to serve there briefly. They also choose to be there. And I assure you that it's not only because the weather is moderate, but it's also because they find the culture, the environment, social environment friendly. You could be in Hyderabad all your life without knowing Telugu at all. You could be very comfortable there, speaking just Hindi, which will pass off for Urdu. We have our own accent. In fact, I must warn you that if Dinesh and I were speaking in Hindi, or what we consider Hindi, then most of you would be laughing even where no humor was intended, because we have our own accent, our own expressions. So this long question was to ask you, this whole effort of Urdu translations, this Urdu background, did that also contribute to the growth of Hyderabad as a very major city, globalized city?
No, I'll not go into the Osmania University question because it's a long answer and I want some...
You do deal with it in your book.
There's a whole chapter, so I would like you to read that.
Yeah, sure.
But that question is still open. When Madhya Pradesh wanted to introduce medicine, teaching of MBBS in Hindi, I wrote an article saying that what Madhya Pradesh can learn from Hyderabad's example. Because it's the methodology. How did they translate those textbooks? They developed a methodology. How should we deal with the technical terminology? Should it be only the explanatory notes be in local language and retain the technical terms? Or how should the symbols be used, chemical symbols? And all that was discussed and a detailed methodology was developed. So I wrote that, if you're trying to translate medical text into Hindi, why not follow that methodology? So those questions are pretty much there, and there was a larger commission in the 50s on the technical use of Indian languages in technical education, and Hyderabad experts went and presented that methodology there also. So that effort did not...
So what is the lesson from Hyderabad's experience?
I think
Can
it
other
is,
languages...
yeah, it is useful, but I don't know if it is useful in today's context. Because at that time also proficiency in English was a must. So all those guys who were passing out had to learn English, and they had to be proficient, and their English was superb because I read those papers and all that. So they were equally good in English as well as. So it's good if we can produce bilingual people in today's world. And that was valid at that time also. Proficiency in English was not given up. So that was the thing. But it was more a political project, so to say, for the Nizam at that time. And it had several reasons, several background. It was for the enrichment of Urdu as such. Anjuman-e-Tarakki Urdu that came up there, and people who were behind that, they were involved in that. So let's not go into that. But the language part is very interesting in the sense that Hyderabad state was the only multilingual and multicultural state as it existed in 1948. Because it had Telugu-speaking region, that is the Telangana part. It had Marathi-speaking region, which is part of some districts of Marathwada. And it had the Kannada-speaking region, which is now called the Raichur region. So it was the only multi-linguistic state at that time, and it would have been the only such state if it had continued. In fact, from 48 to 56, the Hyderabad state as it existed before continued. It's only after the reorganization on linguistic basis that, Telugu-speaking areas of Madras Residency were merged because there was another Andhra state up to 1956. So that was the reason that multi-language, multi-linguistic culture still exists. I can speak smattering of Marathi, Kannada, and Urdu and Hindi, of course, because those kind of people you will still find in Hyderabad. So there is no need for you to know Telugu, or even if you know Telugu, it's Telangana Telugu is totally different from the Telugu which is spoken in Andhra. So it is half Urdu, yes, or half Hindustani, so to say. So that culture still exists, and of course, biryani is one of the symbols of that culture. So that's why we are talking of saying Beyond Biryani. And that is why one of the reasons which I have written in the book for Hyderabad becoming globalized is that it has always welcomed people from outside, and it had an assimilative culture, and that culture still exists. Of course, there are attempts to change that very often, but 5 minutes is saying. So, yeah. So I'll finish off, and then we can have some questions. So that exists. So that's why the saying is that Hyderabad is the north of south and south of north. So it is actually at the confluence. I mean, one cannot do without Kannada in, say, Bangalore, or even without Tamil in Madras. But you can still live and live happily without speaking Telugu in Hyderabad. Hope it doesn't change, because that's what is welcoming culture. जैसा कि हैदराबाद में बोलते हैं कि जिसने गंडीपेट का पानी पिया वो यहीं के होके रह गया. Gandipet is the lake where, which used to supply water. So that culture is a strength of Hyderabad, and that has gone into this making of a globalized nature. Even expatriates who come, they like the Hyderabadi culture because they don't feel outside. A lot of people from Odisha, a lot of people from outside India also come and settle down in Hyderabad. So it's really multilingual, multicultural, multi-cuisine city, so to say. And that's the strength of Hyderabad, which other centers, competing places cannot claim to be. Yeah. So I think that's why I would say, and I would stop here, and if there are any questions, maybe you can ask.
The syncretic culture is inherent to Hyderabad. Yeah, that's important. Yeah. So I'll throw open the discussion to the audience. So any questions?
So Hyderabad is a city of concrete. I mean, that's what I saw when I landed in Hyderabad and drove on that expressway for 11 kilometers. So is there any greening attempt in Hyderabad? And also that lake, I think it's full of toxic waste. I mean, what is being done on those lines in Hyderabad?
Well, I'll ask, invite Dinesh to answer, but these are not quite the issues that he addresses.
Yeah, that's
It's-
right.
yeah.
No, there is a chapter, cost of development, where I have talked about this very problem of toxicity.
Yeah.
waste. One of the the most adverse impacts of pharmaceutical industry coming to Hyderabad was that, its water and groundwater got polluted. Because in the
Patancheru.
Patancheru and other areas, because 70s and 80s, they were polluting, anti-pollution laws were not very perfect. And in an attempt to promote industrialization, all that was allowed. So that has been checked. And the Hyderabad rocks are very famous. So a lot of rocks have disappeared. And there is now an attempt to kind of preserve them. The geological rocks are older than Himalaya, they're billions of years old. So those rocks have been cut. So some issues I have touched. Yeah, that's the cost.
I hope you registered that detail. What he just now said about rocks. The stone you find there is older than Himalayas.
Yeah.
So the hills you see around here are bachas
They are-
compared to
Yeah.
the dinosaurs you see in Hyderabad. Well,
No, the
Tirupati
Deccan
is-
rocks are different. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you have a question? Then Yoni.
I just want to ask if it's purely incidental that both the two big tech centers in India are located in the south, Hyderabad and Bangalore. Of course, Chennai also in
Yeah,
a smaller way.
It's a big.
Is it incidental or is it purely for, why is it that they're both located in the south, although we have very primary, like you have the Delhi IIT and you have Kanpur IIT, which could have, is there any reason for that?
Yeah. Thank you for asking this question. I could not cover on that. See, when I talk about technology city or a cluster developing, there are many ingredients to it. One is, of course, a higher technical education institution, then ecosystem surrounding that, then you need policies to implement that, and a market. So, and on top of it, you need infrastructure. When IIT Kanpur was set up, it was an Indo-America project, and for 10 years, it was developed and run fully by American faculty. They were stationed there, equipment came, the journals came, the professors came, and students from here were going. So it was almost integrated with the American system. So at the end of 10 years, there was a core committee which was overseeing all this. They wrote in their assessment saying that we wanted to develop an Indian IIT, not an Indian MIT, not an MIT in India. So that developed as an island. So if you really ask that question, that what did IIT Kanpur do to Kanpur, it did not do much. Because rest of it was, so it's just transplanting an institution is not important. Of course, IIT Kanpur has tremendously developed to the rest of India, but if you're really talking for what it did to Kanpur, even today, because it did not develop a tech industry in Kanpur. So only an institution alone will not help. So you need an ecosystem for that. You need industries, you need entrepreneurs, you need capital, and that's what is different. For example, in Institute of Science, suppose it was started in, say, Bhopal or some other place, would it have succeeded? We don't know. Because you needed a system. Because after Indian Institute of Science was set up in 1909 or 10, the industry department of Mysore government started developing industries around that, Most of the soap making and all those technologies came out from that, and they were transferred to industry. They had policies to promote all that. So you need an ecosystem for that. And then you convert that into larger things. So that's what differentiates the southern cities from, say, other places, so to say. I mean, Madras is equally developed. For example, Delhi IIT, but you have a tech industry in NCR. It may not be physically in Delhi, but it's in Gurgaon and Noida. So that makes a difference. So that's what happened in these cities. Because many cities in India have tried to emulate Hyderabad, but they have not been successful. 5 software technology parks were set up in 1991 in Hyderabad, in Bangalore, in Gandhinagar, in Bhubaneswar, and one more. But only 2 succeeded, Hyderabad and Bangalore. So it is not just a policy, it's not just a physical infrastructure, but you need a whole lot of factors. Of course, technical manpower is the most important key, but you need several other ingredients to make it happen. Thank you. Yaunika. No? No, in fact, I wrote a paper somewhere that future space cities in India, somebody wanted me to write that paper. And where can you were discussing the private space sector, so I was asked to write a paper on where all the, space industry can develop. So I mentioned Dehradun is one of them because it has one ingredient, which is a knowledge factor, knowledge creation, that those institutions are there. But other linkages, I would say, are lacking. So unless you have that surrounding systems, you cannot succeed. And I remember, somebody, it was mentioned in the morning that Uttarakhand is going to be 25 years old next year. So it so happened that I was covering when it was being created 25 years ago. And I was interviewing Mr. B.D. Pandey, who lived in Almora, and on what his vision of future Uttarakhand would be. He said, I would develop it like Switzerland, in the sense that we have, I asked him to elaborate. He says, so we can have industries which can work in the hills. He says, I don't want cement plants, I don't want manufacturing units to come to the hill states, a future Uttarakhand. He says, we can have chocolate making, we can have electronics, we can have several other kinds of industries which are conducive to this environment. So he had that vision, but you needed policies to translate that vision into reality. So, of course, you need to have an objective, a vision, but you need mechanisms to translate. So that's where we stand today.
Yeah.
Yeah, Varnika. Yeah, that's good.
And my question is regarding that. So, while you say that Hyderabad has a syncretic culture or has had, have you sort of done any sort of comparison between the new city or the tech city that is being developed, the glitzy Hyderabad tech city, and the similar kind of development, say in Bangalore, even Gurgaon, and now even in the smaller cities? So, is the culture still intact in those pockets, or is it still restricted to the old city where, what we understand of the cultural part of the city? So that is one. And the second is that, do you think Hyderabad's success also lies in the fact that probably people there have an aspiration for a good quality of life? I mean, I have not seen misers from Hyderabad. So, they're pretty interested in good things in life.
Two of the misers are sitting here. Of course, we have been in Delhi, so...
so yeah, that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thanks. It is a very good question because that keeps coming. He mentioned about the twin cities, Hyderabad and Secunderabad, and now we call it the Tri-City. There's Hyderabad, the Secunderabad, and Cyberabad. So
That's, by the way, an official name.
yeah, that's a official district, and
There's
it has everything.
Commissionerate of Cyberabad.
Yeah, so it's not just an enclave; it's a proper
It's
city.
not just a media.
And it is
label.
it's a greenfield city, and that's the biggest success story of India, modern India, I would say, that we have created an economic center. Of course, you have those Lavasa and all those cities created, but they are not economic centers. This is an economic and technology hub, and it has come up in past 25 to 30 years. And that's the story that needs to be told, I think.
And it's in one place,
yeah,
the Western corridor.
Yeah, it's at...
Whereas in Bangalore, it is in different places.
Yeah.
It's not in one place.
Right.
So
there is
geographically, that matters. So these are the three components. And on the face of it, they look different. they look as if they are living in silos. Somebody, because I live in old city of Hyderabad, then now we shifted to so-called new city, and of course, my extended family lives in Hyderabad, so I keep visiting all the three parts of the city. So they look different at one look from outside, but they are all interconnected. Today, nobody in Hyderabad can say that their family doesn't have anything to do with either pharma or IT sector or any of the technology sectors. So this sector has become so pervasive that literally every family is in some way connected or impacted by it. So that is the power of the economic activity that is
Equally,
happening.
every family will have some member or the other in US.
In US, that's a different story. But culturally, they are slightly, they maintain their distinct identity, but there are meeting points. For example, now a lot of heritage walks go to Old City, and I asked the person who conducts, I asked, who are these people who come to your, Anuradha Reddy, she conducts a walk every week. So I asked her, so she said, all of them are from the Hyderabad city. All of them are techies. So there is an interest, there is an interconnection, they are talking to each other, and of course, the food is the common factor. I mean, you want to get the best of the biryani or halim, you have to go to the old city. Of course, it's available all over. So that kind of connects people, the food and the culture. That is, so they are existing in silos on face of it, but they are connected. So it's not as if Hyderabad is a totally enclave. Of course, it looks very elite. It is an elite. I mean, only certain class of people can live there. But there are a lot of tech workers who have come from surrounding districts, and they come and work. So there is a cultural amalgamation. There is a cultural movement. So some anthropologists and sociologists have done that, how these three cities talk to each other, what are the interconnected, things among them. And of course, the metro is a good connector. In 1 hour, you can reach from one end to another. So I think these are all a continuous process of evolving of a city. And that's what we see in Hyderabad. Yeah.
Sure.
You talked about the engineering colleges, which sprung up a lot in entire Andhra Pradesh, then Andhra Pradesh, now of course Telangana, Andhra. By the way, I'm Hyderabadi.
Oh, lovely.
I live in Banjara Hills Road, number 12. So what happened was that I was with the skills ministry for a while, and we're doing a research and finding out about the skills development. And we found that the engineering colleges, which sprung up in Andhra Pradesh, the student passing out from there, 85% of them were not employable. In spite of that, you're attracting a huge number of engineers going to the IT industry in particular. So what could be the reason, and what happens with the 85% people?
No, that problem is not just typical of Hyderabad. That is across India. There are several tiers of engineering college. There is the top tier, you have the IITs, now you have 25 of them. At the second tier, you have NITs, you have a lot of them. At the third tier, you have engineering colleges, which have thousands, and there's an oversupply there. So the problem, the mismatch between the industry skill and what these graduates come out is still, it's there. It's not just Hyderabad, it's there all over. And there are ways, for example, Wipro, which hires, say, 10,000 engineers a year, they have their own training system so that they can be, and then the skills are changing so fast. Today it is Java, tomorrow it is something else, day after it is AI, then there is something else. So the industry will always have to train people to make them employable, and that's what is happening. It's not just with Telangana or Andhra Pradesh, but it's a problem across the board. So that, of course, industry would like employable engineers straight away, but that cannot happen because the requirements keep changing.
I have some final words. Since the conversation began with a comparison with Bangalore, comparison between Hyderabad and Bangalore, I must end with another comparison between those two cities. As an author, I'm sure Dinesh also will agree, Bangalore is far ahead of Hyderabad in the cultural sphere. There is still something known as, there is a lot of liberal arts education, colleges that deal with pure science, arts, are still much in business, respected in Bangalore, and even cities like Bombay, Madras, and most certainly Delhi. In Hyderabad, if you are not doing engineering or medicine, you are a loser. So there is that very skewed development in Hyderabad. And there is such a proliferation, unnatural, unhealthy proliferation of techs, B-techs, that it's not a joke if the auto rickshaw driver or your watchman is a B-tech. So in Hyderabad, we say that B-tech is the new matriculation. I mean, there are so many of them that they are unemployable, that they are forced to take to such jobs.
I will not answer. The answer is Telugus want to make money and not believe in other things. So that's what Varnika said. No, there are no biases.
Thank you so much, sir, for the enlightening session.